The janitor's mop glided across the marble floor of the towering skyscraper, each stroke echoing his quiet determination. His name was Daniel, a single father who worked long nights while his little girl slept at home, waiting for him to return with stories of the stars she never got to see. For years, Daniel had been invisible in the glass tower where fortunes were made, his presence marked only by the faint smell of disinfectant and the shine of spotless hallways. Yet, he carried a silent pride in his heart. Every dollar he earned meant food on the table and books for his daughter's school bag. On this particular evening, the lobby hummed with energy. The CEO himself was rushing through, a man of stature and untouchable power, trailed by assistants and flashing cameras. Daniel noticed details others ignored, the flicker of headlights outside, the nervous twitch of a man near a sleek black car. Then, like lightning, his instincts screamed. Something wasn't right. Without hesitation, Daniel dropped his mop, sprinted forward, and shouted, "Don't get in the car." The words cracked through the air like thunder, startling everyone, especially the CEO who froze mid-step. In that split second, Daniel's courage shattered the barrier of invisibility that had always cloaked him. No one could have predicted that this ordinary man, dressed in a faded uniform and calloused hands, was about to alter not only the destiny of the man he saved but his own life as well. For what Daniel did next, and the consequences that followed, would forever mark him as more than just a janitor. The sudden warning stopped the CEO in his tracks, and in that pause, the truth revealed itself. A man who had been loitering near the car lunged forward, a glint of cold steel flashing in his hand. Security reacted too late, but Daniel was already moving, his body propelled by a force greater than fear, the desperate instinct of a father who knew what it meant to protect. He tackled the stranger to the ground, wrestling the weapon away in a blur of sweat and struggle. Chaos erupted in the lobby, people screamed, cell phones rose like shields, and police sirens wailed as officers stormed forward. The CEO, shaken but unharmed, stood frozen, his eyes locked on the janitor who had just saved his life. The image burned into everyone's mind, a man in a stained uniform pinning down an armed attacker with the strength of sheer will. Cameras captured it, and within seconds, the story began spreading far beyond those glass walls. Daniel, who had always felt unseen, suddenly stood in the center of every gaze. But as officers pulled the attacker away and order returned, Daniel quietly brushed himself off, embarrassed by the attention. He wasn't a hero in his own mind, he was just a father who had done what he hoped someone would do for his daughter if danger ever found her. Yet, for the CEO, that act of courage pierced deeper than anything wealth or status had ever brought. He knew in that instant that the man before him was not ordinary, but extraordinary, and he wouldn't let this moment fade like another headline. Something inside him shifted, though Daniel had no idea how much this single act would change both their lives forever. The following morning, Daniel returned to work expecting nothing more than whispers in the corridors and awkward stares from executives unused to acknowledging him. Instead, he walked into a storm of attention he could never have imagined. News outlets had replayed the footage all night. Single dad janitor saves CEO's life, blazed across television screens, and millions had shared his story online. Strangers hailed him as a hero, yet Daniel's thoughts were only of his daughter, Emma, and whether the commotion might frighten her. When he reached the janitor's closet, a place he usually found comfort in its solitude, he was startled to see the CEO himself waiting there. Gone was the commanding figure surrounded by suits and flashing cameras. Now he stood humbly, gratitude etched in his face. "You didn't just save my life," the CEO said softly, "you reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that humanity is greater than status." Daniel shifted uneasily, and used to praise, insisting he had only acted out of instinct. But the CEO pressed on, asking about Emma, about his struggles, about the long nights Daniel had carried silently while the world overlooked him. For the first time, someone from that tower of power truly saw him, not as a janitor, but as a man of integrity, a father whose sacrifices deserved more than invisibility. The CEO's words carried no hint of charity, they resonated with sincerity, a rare acknowledgement that reached into the deepest corners of Daniel's weary soul. And in that moment, Daniel realized that saving a life was not the end of this story. but only the beginning of something greater, an unexpected bond that would redefine his place in the world. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's life began to shift in ways he never anticipated. The CEO, whose name was Richard, did more than offer words of gratitude, he extended opportunities. He invited Daniel and Emma to his office, not to parade them as symbols, but to truly know them. Emma, shy at first, lit up when Richard asked about her dreams. She told him she wanted to be a teacher, so she could help kids who felt invisible, just like her dad sometimes did. Her words struck Richard with a force greater than any boardroom deal. He arranged for Emma to receive the best schooling, removing the financial weight Daniel had carried alone for years. But the transformation didn't stop there. Richard also offered Daniel a new role. Not as a janitor, but as part of the company's safety and facilities team, recognizing the vigilance that had saved his life. For the first time, Daniel wore a badge that wasn't just a uniform but a symbol of trust and respect. The employees who once passed him without notice now greeted him with admiration, some even apologizing for years of overlooking the man who had always been right there. Yet Daniel remained humble, reminding himself that titles didn't define worth, character did. Still, late at night, when Emma hugged him tighter than ever and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Dad," he allowed himself to feel the warmth of recognition he had long been denied. And while the world labeled him a hero, in Daniel's heart, the true miracle was watching his daughter believe that kindness and courage could change the course of a life, but life has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. As Daniel adjusted to his new role, whispers surfaced among certain executives who resented his sudden rise. Some muttered that he was only there because of sympathy, others sneered at his lack of education compared to their polished resumes. Daniel heard the words, felt the cold shoulders, yet he refused to let bitterness take root. Instead, he focused on his work, arriving early, staying late, and treating everyone with the same respect he had always shown. One afternoon, as he inspected the building's security cameras, he discovered a flaw in the system, a blind spot that could have left the company vulnerable. He brought it to Richard's attention, and together they resolved the issue quietly, preventing what could have been another disaster. Richard, impressed by Daniel's vigilance, publicly commended him at a company meeting, silencing many doubters in the room. Yet it wasn't the applause that mattered to Daniel. It was the look on Emma's face when she proudly told her classmates, "My dad keeps people safe." The weight of those words carried more value than any paycheck or promotion. He began to realize that his journey was never about climbing a corporate ladder, but about proving, to himself, to Emma, and perhaps to the world, that true worth comes not from wealth or titles, but from the courage to stand firm in the face of challenge. The very people who once ignored him now found themselves inspired by his resilience, a reminder that greatness often comes from the most unexpected places. Months later, the skyscraper lobby shone brighter than ever, but it wasn't the polished floors that caught people's eyes, it was the quiet presence of Daniel, now a man respected by colleagues and cherished by friends he never thought he'd have. His story had traveled far beyond the city, touching hearts across the country, reminding people that ordinary lives could hold extraordinary strength. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the skyline in gold, Daniel stood outside with Emma, watching her point toward the horizon. "Dad," she whispered, her small hand clasped in his, "do you think heroes always wear suits?" He smiled, kneeling to meet her gaze. "No, sweetheart. Heroes are just people who choose to do what's right, even when it's hard." Emma beamed, her eyes reflecting the light of hope, and in that moment Daniel felt the weight of his struggles transform into something greater, purpose. Richard soon joined them, no longer just a CEO, but a friend who had been changed by the janitor's courage. Together, they laughed, talked about the future, and shared a vision where kindness shaped more than profits. For Daniel, the greatest reward wasn't the recognition or the opportunities, it was showing Emma that integrity could rewrite the course of a life. As they walked home hand in hand, the night sky stretched above them, wide and full of promise. And though the world would remember him as the janitor who saved a life, Daniel knew the truth. He was simply a father, guided by love, proving that even in the quietest corners of society, compassion has the power to change everything.